What you been up to this week anyway, before we talk about finding any sound? Well, hey dudes, by the way, anybody listening, thank you so much for like all of the great like reviews and stuff all of the kind things that you've been saying about Ian and I. We love you. We feel better about ourselves, honestly, because we didn't really have like a gauge on if anybody would be into it or not. We were like, is anybody going to like this? Is this a bit too base? But everybody's digging it, right? Are you getting nice messages on your end? Yeah.
I've gotten some really great messages, and it's so much fun. It's fun when someone says, "Oh, this thing that you said, helped out in some way," and then I'm like, "What was it that I said?" Like sometimes I got to go back and like, what was it? Like someone sent me a quote. And I was like, I don't remember saying that at all. And they're like, "Oh, this was huge for me." I'm like, "What?" Oh, amazing. So I'm like, "Oh man, I got to be, I got to be careful about what I say because there are actually other people listening."
There are people now. Listening. Hopefully, nobody listened to last week. I was just completely.
Last week was one of my favorites.
Oh, really?
I was a mess. Yeah.
I was just like, if anybody didn't listen to last week, I was just. I was speaking to Phil earlier, and Phil's obviously. He's SBL dad. He sort of like hugs us all and keeps us in alignment. But he's the director of ops of SBL, and I was like, oh man, last week's podcast. I'd like, if anybody has listened to it and just thought, what the heck was going on? I just had a week of hell, like just like loads of stuff to do. I just like worked myself to the absolute bone, like a few like 12 to 14 hours a day, like days. Yeah. I was like feeling like really rough, which actually has got worse this week. So I obviously came down with something, obviously had something last week. Like, I'm not sure whether it was COVID or whatever. I'm like Lisa tested me last week. It came back negative, but we've all got really sore throats, all of us. Oh. And then like yesterday or the day before, our kids, all of their friends that they've been playing around with recently over the last week, all came down with COVID.
Really?
All the parents, all the kids. So I'm like, and God. I was tested once, like just after that last podcast when I was completely, I don't know, just like I've got no. What did we even talk about last week?
What did we talk about last week?
Legit question. I can barely remember. I've got no idea what. I'd had like ibuprofen and like I've got like it was a mess. I was a mess. All I can remember is you asking me questions and then me like 30 seconds into answering them thinking, what am I talking about? What did he ask me?
I can't remember what I ate for breakfast today. I mean, classic thing. You put me on the spot. What did we talk about? I'm like, loved the episode. So great.
Do you know what it was? Actually, we didn't talk about anything specific. We just, I can remember now. I can remember that we hopped on, we pressed record. Yeah. And we just talked about a load of stuff. I'm just looking at our notes now. We talked about Larita.
Insanity.
We talked about Larita bases and all of your.
Oh, yeah.
That's what we were talking about. We were talking about
custom bases.
Ordering custom bases. And then that went on to.
Like, stream of consciousness
goals. They're just me just rambling basically, just me rambling about ludicrous bass things. I can't remember. Anyway, I think it and funnily enough, it was like the longest podcast we've ever. So check it out. We don't know what we talked about, and it was the longest one. How does that doesn't compute?
I mean. That's just because we get rambling, dude. That's Bass Bond Across the Pond is what that is. That if anybody wants to listen to that one, or if you haven't and you're intrigued, just hit the 2X. Just 2X that sucker, and it's just going to rip by, and it's going to be a blast.
Yeah.
Hey, I wanted to say, though, before we move on to something where we're like, this is what we're talking about, I wanted to say, regarding the Haters episode, which I think is that episode 2?
Yeah.
That I got a bunch of just like really intriguing comments and messages about that. And one thing that I just wanted to share is somebody said something that just sort of stopped me. They said, hey, sometimes when people make critical comments, and obviously not like comments that are really pointed at getting at like the way you look or the way you speak or like really mean things, but if they're critical things, this person said, sometimes those are the people that actually really like your work a lot and want to see it at its best. And I thought, boy, that is an interesting, because I think, right, we always get self-conscious, or like it hits at my self-confidence when someone leaves something that's really critical. But I like this idea of, instead of always looking at it as hate, and you so eloquently said there's different levels. Like, it's not all hate. Sometimes people are giving you a comment and saying, hey, this is actually incorrect, and you're, oh man, we've been, I mean, if you live a life on the internet, you get corrected all the time, right?
Oh, I'm full of crap.
That's part of the deal.
I'm full of crap, yeah. I can remember mentioning something about how your body works or something like that in a lesson or something like that, and this doctor was in the comments and he was like, nah, dude. I was like, okay, good to know.
Misinformation. Yeah.
Good to know, yeah.
But I like this idea that sometimes what can come across in text as sharp criticism could actually be a fan or someone that really consumes a lot of your content saying, this isn't good enough and you're better than this. Yeah. And I just thought, woo, that's actually not something that I had ever considered, to be honest. So I wish I remember, I need to take better notes about who writes this stuff. But if that's you out there, faithful SBL podcast listener, thank you. Because that's some perspective that I didn't have before. It was really good.
Absolutely. And I think that sometimes when people do leave comments under lessons or on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, like there's very different degrees of communication via text. You know, and some people aren't that great at it. They're just, they might be leaving something that they think that you're going to read a specific way, but you don't. And I think that there's a really great author called Cameron Herald that I guess he's like an author. He's actually the was the COO of 1-800-GOT-JUNK. I like his books anyway. Anyway, but in one of his books, he was talking about the ineffective nature of written materials, right? Communications via written materials. And he said, if you take the phrase, I didn't say I loved you, or I didn't say I love you, if you take that phrase and then if you put an inflection on each different word, it's actually got like 6 or 7 different meanings. So, for instance, I could say, I didn't say I loved you, and then you can say, I didn't say I loved you, or I didn't say I loved you, or I didn't say I loved you, meaning somebody else. Right. Or I didn't say I loved you. I didn't say I loved you. I meant somebody else. So there's all of these different things, and that can be taken from written comments, and I think that it is very easy for people just not to fully appreciate that it could be read in a different way. So they mean,
for sure,
like something really positive or have a positive slant, or it's coming from a really fantastic place, but it's maybe just not written eloquently enough, or just with a little more context wrapped around it. And that's not their fault, man. It's just the way it is. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, for sure. And too, if you choose to live a life on the internet, there will be people that express their opinions about how you're living your life, and that's part of the deal. I think I mean, we just all have to learn how to cope, deal, and not let that destroy our self-confidence and keep us from posting and keep us from being ourselves on the internet. As much as we want to be.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. I saw another listener actually pop up on, I think it was Instagram or one of the places. It was, actually just another side note. It was great to see a load of discussion on Instagram all around sort of like the podcast. I was like, there was like 60 comments. I was like, this is badass.
I know.
I feel like for me, I just really like it when, it's not just, it's when it sparks conversation. I love it when it sparks conversation, because I'm like, that's what we're trying to create. We're trying to create a conversation and a community that has a common love of music and bass and all of that good stuff. So it was really fantastic, because I think that it's easy to get lots of people to comment when you play something cool, and everybody's like, yay, in the comments. But actually, when you're not playing anything, when you're not even holding a bass, are you still getting people to think about how they think about the bass or what they love about the bass or different, things and all of these different areas that we've been talking about? So I really, really dug that actually. But what I was going to say is one of the comments was, and rightly so, and I think that a lot of people think this about celebrities as well. So this guy or girl, I can't remember if it was a guy or girl, they said, hey, look, this haters thing is, I understand that, people like talking about it, stuff like that, all good. But if you are going on the internet, you have to be prepared for it, because you are putting yourself out in the spotlight. And if you are not prepared for it, okay, you are like, what they were saying is you're a bit of a dick. If you're not prepared for it, like, don't be stupid. This is going to happen. Now,
right.
But here's the gag though. I actually don't think that anybody is like, I am now going to put myself on the internet. I think it's a slow burn, right? And I think you slowly ease into it, and then suddenly you're like, oh, that was a bad comment, and then there's more bad comments. As you get more followers and more people get interested in what you do, you are going to get more bad comments. So I think it's exactly the same in most cases. I know there's outliers where people just get super famous, but I think in general, people think that about celebrities. They're like, well, they're famous, and getting shit on by everybody and all of the public calling you out on stuff that is a part of being famous. Yeah, exactly that. You you're a celebrity, you have to deal with that shit, right? And I don't agree with that. I think that it's just unfortunately the space that we live in. So I think that if anybody does feel like, well, if you put stuff on the internet, you are going to get slammed by somebody, you should just live with it. I think the unfortunate truth is that I think that people slide into it and then find themselves at a point where they're like, oh, ow, this hurt. They might have been online, posting stuff like 6 months, 12 months with everybody just saying, hey, this is bad. This is badass. So I don't know. Like, I think have you had that experience?
Oh, for sure. I mean, and if anybody wants to dig into this more, and you haven't listened to episode 2, you should, because Scott went into talking about how he's dealt with it over the years on SBL. I talked about it a little bit from my perspective. I mean, I had no idea that I would have a bunch of people checking out what I did. I mean, I wanted to, but I was so thrilled when I got 1,000 followers. That was like amazing. I mean, so for me, it's about gratitude, and it's about really being okay with getting some negativity. And I said this in the episode, but when I get something that's negative, I actually see it as like, ooh, the thing that I'm doing is stirring. Like you're talking about, when you have a podcast clip on Instagram and it generates all this discussion. Some of it's positive, some of it's negative, whatever. But generating the discussion is the thing that I want. I mean, I don't want to intentionally just like shit post and have people upset. I'm not trying to do that. I am trying to be me, but I'm also trying to have a stance. I'm trying to have a voice, an opinion. And then there's some people that don't agree or don't like the way I present something or whatever. And that's totally fine. And when I get a little bit of that, I start to think, yeah, this is good. That means it's resonating. And when I see, like, I did a reel recently where I can't remember which one it was, but a lot of nice comments, but then there would be some negative comments from people I didn't know. And I was like, yes, this has made it out of the orbit. It's made it out of my little bubble. Like when I start to see people pop up that I don't recognize, and they're not giving me a bunch of clap emojis or saying, oh, this is so awesome. And it's like, oh yeah, but so-and-so did this a long time ago, or oh man, or like, I don't like it. Someone just said, I don't like it. And I looked and I was like, hey, that's somebody that I don't know. And that means it popped out of my bubble. And I think that's good.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a good thing.
I think it is. I think like something I was thinking about as well, I think it will be interesting to all of the listeners as well, because I think that in a way that, like people look at celebrities and stuff, and it's really easy to dehumanize them. I think it's similar with people on the web as well, on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube or whatever. It is easy to forget that they are humans. And I've got like a couple of great stories. Just to give people context, and I'll just also broadly, and this is it's broad brushstrokes, right? But in general, like musicians and actors, right, are kind of sensitive souls in many ways,
sure.
because we create art. That's what we do, and it just comes with the territory. In my experience, all of the people that I have hung out with in my lifetime as a musician, if I had to, like, what's the scale of like sensitivity? It's actually really, I mean, like, a lot of musicians are very, very sensitive.
Yes, for sure.
And what I've found is, as well, and this is the interesting thing that I wanted to share, is that because a lot of the time we'll get, one of the artists that's worked with SBL, they've created a course or whatever, right, for the platform, and we'll decide to take one of those lessons and publish it on YouTube so people can check it out, and it'll be like, hey, check this out, whoever it is. When we've done that in the past, I really quickly learned that I posted 2, like, this is a good few years ago. I posted 2, and both the guys that were were the artists of those videos that we shared on YouTube. I just didn't put 2 and 2 together, right? And they were just like, that they're not prepared for it. Like, and these like really well-known bass players, they are not prepared to be put on a platform and then have like 500 comments underneath, all judging them on that video. Like, oh, he's good. Oh, he shouldn't be playing a 5-string. Oh, this note buzzed when he played. Like, these like legends, right? They're just, these guys are used to like old school vibes. I mean, they're like bass monsters, and everybody else is like a huge super fan. And on YouTube, specifically on YouTube, that culture isn't there. It's like open platform. Everything goes.
Shark-infested waters, man.
If you want to punch somebody in the face on YouTube, you can go punch somebody in the face. So I had these 2 experiences. I published the first one, and I can remember, like, both of these guys actually messaged me on the day that we published the video on YouTube and said, please take it down.
Wow.
Please take it down. Yeah. And I had to get on a call and say, look, I know that's what you're like. I know that you've got this kind of like visceral kind of like, oh God, it's panic. Like, you're not used to this and you want to take it down. I was just like, but this is just that platform. Okay. That's just that platform. We'll remove a couple of, like, if there's any kind of like bonkers comments, we'll remove them. But it was me just kind of sort of like trying to talk him off the edge a little bit and just say, you know what, it's actually good because it sparks conversation, and it's just culturally where YouTube's at. But what I did learn is that now when we publish people's videos, I'm not sure I did it with you. I think I might have done it with you. I think I might have just given you a heads up and said, look, this is, did I give you a heads up? Because I've done it to other people. I've had to, we're going to publish one of your videos. And then the heads up is, hey, YouTube is culturally, it's a little different in that we're gonna post this video, and then some people are gonna call you out and just say, yeah, you're a terrible player. I don't even know why this guy's famous. He might as well play guitar. Oh, look at his face. Oh, bass face. I mean, like, all of these crazy sort of like comments, and they are not used to it. So even though it's probably in the scheme of things, probably sort of like not that many bad comments, all they will see is the bad comments. So I've kind of got to sort of like just give them a heads up. I'm sure I gave him a heads up. And I was like,
I think you did. I mean, we talked about it, but I knew too. I mean, I spend enough time on YouTube. I get it. I knew what was about to happen. And I mean, I may have mentioned this too, but I always read the negative comments with my kids, and we laugh.
Oh yeah, you did. Yeah, that's
the way. Yeah, that's the way I try to decompress it. Like, if somebody is responding to looks, or someone is like, oh, that's so terrible, and he's a bad bass player. Like, I read that. Whatever. Oh man, and my kids and we laugh. Oh god. Oh, I got to get on that Peloton. Yeah, that one does kill me. Oh, he's like fatter than he was in the last video. Like, because it's true. It's true.
It's so interesting.
So but I mean, honestly, I don't feel like my self-confidence is unshakable necessarily. There's definitely comments that get to me, but I'm really proud of the work I do. I don't do work that I don't believe in. I don't make a video if I don't think it's good. And So if someone has a negative comment, I don't go, oh no, that's right, because I don't believe in this actually. I mean, I think that starts to really spiral people, as if, they're hearing these things that are really deep truths, and it feels like you're getting uncovered. But I feel like the videos that I make or the content that I make, I'm fine with someone having a different opinion, because I really believe in the video. I believe in the idea. I believe in the education style. So I'm fine with it. If you want to shoot it down, that's okay.
Yeah, great, isn't it? I think I mentioned it last time that I can remember somebody saying something on a forum, and like there was a bunch of guys. I can't remember what, it might have been Base Chat or something like that. Basechat.co.uk. It's a really fantastic forum that a friend of mine runs. And but there was one thread, and it was like, I think it was like something related to, it might have not even been related to SBL or myself. I think it was something related to something else. Somebody mentioned me, and like somebody was like, oh, I hate that guy. And then this other guy's like, oh, the way he stumbles through his words. Oh, so annoying. And there was sort of like, I don't know, like 4 or 5, maybe even more than 4 or 5 comments, just like give me a bit of a kick in. I was like, I'm on Base Chat. I read all it. So I went on, I was like, guys, I'm a real person. Please
Hello.
stop. Yeah, hello
everyone.
Real human here. And they were like, oh, I'm so sorry. So I was like, it's all good. It's all good. But I think that people just forget, People forget. It's just the way it is. Anyway.
Well, it's easy target when you're successful too. Easy target when you're successful. If you didn't run a monster platform, everybody'd be like, "Oh, he's the best. Oh, I love what he's trying to do." But then when you've done it, people are like, "Oh man, that guy can suck it." Because you're successful.
Oh man, can you even imagine what it must be like? Like on a celebrity level. I just can't even imagine. I can't imagine what it would be like going to the supermarket or something, and you walk
as a Kardashian,
and then and all the tabloids there, and you're like on the front page, and it's like, I'm not sure about the States, but in the UK there was definitely this era that we went through where the front page was like, it was just every single week it was just sort of like some good-looking like movie star girl getting out of a car drunk. She'd obviously going to a friend's house or going to a nightclub or whatever, having some beers and stuff like that, but the paparazzi are there just to sort of like, as they're trying to get out of a cool car with like a small skirt on or something, the paparazzi are like taking photos of her. I can't even imagine what it'd be like, Sunday morning going to the shop and you're like, oh no, and you're like there on the front page of the paper. Oh,
see, Scott, it's good to be a base dad.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Yeah. It kind of protects us, doesn't it? It's just like a whole lot of dudes.
I got no paparazzi shooting photos of me, man. And it never will happen.
I'll tell you the interesting thing that you will experience that kind of like blew me away the first time it happened to me, is that it'll be when you go to a bass show, like if you go to NAMM or something like that. That'll be bonkers. It'll be a really it'll be a super interesting time. Like I can remember going to the UK bass show after like SBL had maybe, I don't know, it had, like I'd been doing it for like a while, so it maybe had sort of like 400,000 or 500,000 subs or something like that. And I went to the UK bass show, and like I've mentioned it before, but I'm kind of I'm a bit of a recluse. I'm like kind of like my own space and all of that kind of stuff. And it was just bonkers. It was just, it was like, I mean, like, and no shame. I actually I'm not sure how long, but every time I got a little bit worn out, I was going and sitting in a toilet cubicle, just kind of sort of like hiding out for like 10 minutes,
just like recharging.
Because I was just kind of just like overwhelmed by it, and my voice was sore, and it was just sort of like full on, and I was just sort of like, I was like hiding in the toilet. So
well, for me, they're gonna be like, Scott, and then they're gonna say, oh man, you've put on some pounds.
Have you been living in America? Because your accent sounds different. Oh no, they'll know it's you. Like, honestly, it's gonna be fun for you. It's really cool. It's like my word, like bass players, because the internet is like this whole. it's separate. It's separate in a way from real life, isn't it? Isn't
Right.
You know what? Isn't it going to be weird when it's not? Like I've been watching my kids playing Roblox at the minute, and I'm like watching them playing. I'm like, oh, this is like the beginning of that film. What's that film called? Ready Player One.
Oh yeah, sure.
Like that
I love that movie.
like they've got their. Oh, it's a great movie, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like one of my
love
favorite
it.
movies of the last few years. Yeah, and that is it. You know, they've got these. You can build an avatar, and you've got like a home in there, and it's pretty weird actually, and like really, and I can see it's like really addictive for the kids as well. I'm like, oh, this is the start. This is like Ready Player One 1.0. You know, and in 20 years
we go.
We'll be sort of like donning our headsets and sort of like
just
going into
stacked on top of each other, and in those trailer things, like in the movie, just everybody lives
so great.
stacked up.
Yeah, if anybody's not seen Ready Player One, absolutely check it out. If you're into sci-fi stuff and futuristic stuff, it's really great. It's definitely got sort of like a Spielberg-y kind of. Who's the other guy that did like Star Trek and stuff? Like he's done a bunch of stuff.
Oh, Star Trek? I'm such a
no,
Star
like
Wars guy. I don't know.
All of the new ones though. What's his name?
JJ? JJ Abrams?
Yeah, JJ. Yeah, it's got that sort of like feel. Did JJ Abrams do it actually?
I'm not sure.
JJ Abrams.
I'm not sure.
I'm gonna have a look. So Ready Player One.
JJ's been busy though. I mean, he did some of those new Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
He did at least one of the new Trek movies.
Oh, there you go. This one was Ready Player One, directed by Spielberg. So I was right. It's definitely got a Spielberg feel to it because he did it. But it's essentially like set in a futuristic world where, essentially people put on headsets and live in a virtual world, and and because it's so much more of a kind of a life upgrade inside the virtual world, their real life actually gets forgotten about. So they all just live in sound like trailers all stacked on top of each other and treat themselves just generally like crap and don't eat very well. And then they stick on their headsets and they live the majority of their life out in this virtual world. Very, very cool. Obviously,
very compelling. Are you a sci-fi guy, Scott Devine? Did I not maybe know this about you? Are you a sci-fi guy?
Yes.
Dude.
Yes.
Okay. Just how about this? Did you like the first Blade Runner, and have you seen the sequel?
Yes. Yeah, I like both.
Me.
Did you not like the second one? Did you like?
I
did you not like?
it. No. I loved it. In fact, it was such a surprise. Blade Runner is a huge movie for me. It's actually one of my favorite movies of all time. I was like a film major in college. I did a communications major, but a big chunk of it was film.
Really? That's interesting.
And I did like my last like, big senior project on Blade Runner and the difference between the theatrical cut and then the director's cut. Anyway,
yeah. Great.
When the sequel was coming out, I thought, oh, I can't. This is going to be terrible. I just need to prepare myself that this is going to be terrible. And it was wonderful. Oh, man, it's incredible. I'm a big sci-fi fan, or at least some aspects of the genre I really love. But boy, Blade Runner 2049, I think it's a cinematic masterpiece.
The way it was shot was just so epic as well. Like the cinematography is just like bonkers, isn't it? Like I think the only thing that kind of sort of like really ground my gears through the entire thing is that Ryan Gosling's just too much of a hottie, and my wife is like, I think that if she
Lisa loves Ryan Gosling.
Oh, she loves Ryan. Like Ryan's sort of like, I'm surprised that we haven't got like maybe we have got posters in the house somewhere, but nowhere I can see them. But she loves Ryan. She loves Ryan, and Gosling, you little monkey, you.
Oh, that's amazing.
So like I'm watching, I'm like, damn, he's cool, and I'm like, damn, he's cool. Like, cool. Like, dude's cool, isn't he? You've got to give it to him. Yeah, he's really great, but he actually plays the part really fantastically, doesn't it?
It's wonderful.
It's killer.
Yeah.
Best sci-fi film of all time. What your top your favorites? Blade Runner.
Man, Blade Runner for sure. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I'm such a huge Star Wars nerd that I'm self-conscious about it and I hide it in everyday life. Ooh. So I do. I like if I start to talk about it, it's just like.
Are you one of those guys
that takes over?
Are you? Because I've got like a friend who's like a real Star Wars fan. So much so that when I can't remember what film came out, but he went and saw it like 3 or 4 or 5 times over a weekend just repeatedly watching it in the cinema. I was like,
I definitely have friends that are in that zone. I have a rule with any new Star Wars movie that I have to go see it alone first because I don't want to talk to my friends or my wife or my kids. I want to just take it in. And then because I'm going to have all these negative feelings and positive feelings, it's going to be this stew of emotions, dude, a stew. And then I'll see it with my family, or then after I've had time to process it. But
you let them in.
Yeah, but it needs to be a solitary experience first. I get the popcorn, dude. I get a soda. I kick back, and I prepare to be elated and devastated. All Star Wars movies are a combination of elation and devastation for me, always.
Because you're so into it.
Because I came out of the womb, and my father, who was a big Star Wars fan, or at least a fan of buying the toys, I came out of the womb and he had a Millennium Falcon, and he's like, "Hey!" Yeah. I mean, I grew up with it. It was released
the year before we were born, right?
Exactly. Yes, 77. Yep, and we're 78.
Yeah.
When's your birthday?
July. I think you're older, right?
I'm October.
Oh, do you know what I've always heard? What's that thing? Respect your elders. But were you into the Mandalorian? Were you into the Mandalorian?
So much so that in the Allison house, we did Mando Fridays. So when every new episode was released, my daughter too, Everly, is a crazy Star Wars fan, super into it. Does even some cosplay stuff. She collects the action figures. We would do, my mom would come up and we would get dinner and we would all prepare. I'm serious, dude. And we would have a full-on Mandalorian watching party every Friday. And I mean, this is not. I'm not proud. No, maybe I just need to embrace this part of myself, Scott. But check this out, man. Even when the new animated stuff came out, they just went through this whole series called Bad Batch that was connected to another animated series called The Clone Wars that we have voraciously gone through.
Yeah,
we did Bad Batch Fridays. Now the season finale's over. Now we are starved for Star Wars content. So not only do I love the movies, I like the shows, I like the animated shows, I watch YouTube videos about the shows. Careful, Divine, because this could become a Star Wars podcast real quick. Don't keep asking me questions, because...
I actually sort of I am a huge film nerd. But I'm not on this level. You've outed
That's why I don't talk about it.
I'm a charlatan.
That's why I don't talk about it, because you're a faker. You're a poser. You're a Star Wars poser.
Yeah, I'm really into. No, I am really into. Is sci-fi your favorite genre? Yeah.
I mean, the thing with me in sci-fi is that I don't then. Get into a lot of other, I don't like Star Trek necessarily, Battlestar Galactica, take it or leave it. I'm not super into anime. It doesn't go deep in terms of the genre. I think I'm just a big Star Wars nerd.
You're just a big Star Wars nerd.
But then there are other films. I mean, the Blade Runner films to me are masterpieces. But yeah, I don't, so you could probably hit me. I don't know. Are you a big sci-fi? Is sci-fi your favorite genre?
I think, I would say so, yeah. I'm a huge fan of all of the stuff that you've mentioned. Some of my favorite, one of my favorite films of all time is Alien, the first one.
Oh, I just think it's... Yes.
It's incredible. It's incredible, isn't it? It's incredible. I just incredible. I love it what I love most about it is the pacing of the acting. I think it's something that's so I'm not sure how he directed it. Yeah, it's kind of sort of and it just really feels a lot of it just feels improvised and off the cuff. It just feels great and underproduced in a certain way. And then, man. Oh, I could just, all of that stuff. All of that stuff.
All of that stuff.
Anyway, before we keep on talking about films, what we're talking about today, finding your sound, aren't we? Finding your sound.
Finding your sound.
What is that for you? What is that for you?
Finding my sound?
Yeah, if somebody said, what does this mean? What does this mean, finding your sound?
I sometimes hesitate because I don't want to repeat myself, because I feel like I've maybe even mentioned this before, but on the podcast. But if I did, it bears repeating. Boy, I think it's about vulnerability, actually. I think finding your sound is less about this endeavor to find the right bass. It's not external at all. It's not about, I mean, and gear is wonderful, and I mean, I'm addicted to it, as a lot of us are, but it really is internal, and it's more about embracing who you are and really being okay with the things you like. Like as I say, like, I can't talk about Star Wars. I'm so into it. Like, I should maybe just embrace that. So I think it's about really being okay with what you like, and letting those things influence how you play, while still searching for new things, obviously, always trying to learn. But Jonathan Marin, who's a wonderful bass player,
What
incredible
a human. Incredible.
Yeah. He said a thing to me. I was talking about this thing where vulnerability, accepting who you are. Like for me, it was the short version is I was really into hair metal growing up, and I really loved like all those like 80s hair metal bands. And then I tried to hide that. And I also really loved playing synth sounds on the electric bass, right? But I was always, because I loved EDM music and techno, and but then I would poo-poo that and push it down and say,
sort of like, I can do a crappy version of it on the bass.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I can do a poor man's version. I would kind of, because I was guarding an insecurity that I had. And then I started to get more confidence around it. I started to talk about it a little bit more. And then Jonathan Marin said a thing to me where he said, and someone had said this to him, it's passed down. Someone said, your vulnerability is your voice. He said, the thing that you're hiding, the thing that you feel ashamed of about your playing, is actually your shit. So if you can figure out what that is, and you can take it and turn it outward, you can push it toward an audience and show it. That's actually
almost
sound.
Amplify it.
Yes, double down on it.
Yeah, double down on it, yeah.
Yes. And so for me, a lot of that was this idea of like, wow, playing these sounds, turning my bass into a synthesizer of sorts, and not disparaging it, saying, well, I'm not saying it's the same. I'm not saying it's better than a Moog. I'm saying it's different, and I'm saying it's me. I enjoy it. I like it. And it's, instead of, I don't know, man, it's not cool. Maybe you should hire so-and-so to, or we should do it on a keyboard. No, like, hey, this is something about what I do, and I really enjoy it. There are a bunch of things. Like, I've been a chameleon over the years. I do a bunch of things. But that is one thing that has felt very empowering, to get rid of that self-doubt and that second guessing, and always kind of like humble, like, kind of downplaying its self-deprecation, and just saying, this is something I like, and it's something I think I'm good at. And do this with it, push it out, instead of tamping it down. So for me, that quote, your vulnerability is your voice, is really interesting, because it doesn't cost any money. You don't have to go buy the expensive
because it'd be
thing.
easy if we could just buy it. I was thinking about this the other day. I was like,
damn right.
Wouldn't it be great if you could just buy the thing? That's why people are obsessed with bass gear, because they're trying to buy.
Yes.
You see a badass and you're like, I'm going to buy that bass, because even though you know that it's you're not going to buy that bass and you're going to sound like them, somewhere in your brain you're like, but it might happen.
For sure. And we all do it. And I do it. I mean, I always say this a lot. Like, I need the advice. Like, the things that I say, the advice that I give is very much for me, as much as it is for anybody else. I mean, I'm talking to myself, because I'm on reverb. I'm trying to find that new piece of gear. I'm trying to, so it's for me as well. So that's been huge for me. I would love to know from your perspective too, like, what you have such an interesting story with the P bass that maybe you could dive into more. I would love to know more about that. I'm sure listeners would too. You've thought a lot about your sound, I think. And when I first heard you, I thought your sound was so unique and cool and stood out from a lot of the other maybe fusion shredders that when I first saw you, I sort of put you in that camp. Like, okay, Scott's one of these guys. We all do that, right? Like, Ian's one of these guys. Scott's one of these guys. You know, you kind of start to, so you get a picture of like what the bass world looks like. But I was so compelled that you were in this scene with a unique take and sound. And I'd love to know what that looks like for you.
Oh man, well, I've been like writing down like a bunch of questions actually. Sort of like why is just I guess sort of like loads of follow-up questions that we can jump into based on finding your voice. So stuff like, is finding your voice important? If so, why? Stuff like that, and we'll get into it in a minute. So like
yeah.
So like what? Question. Yeah, like the importance of finding your voice. What is that, right? And then who is it? The second question I'd love to dive into is when you find your voice, or actually let's talk about bass players who have a voice. Is there a sliding scale? Like as in some people are instantly recognizable and you're just like, that is that person. Some people, not so much, like, and that is their voice, isn't it? So is it important to have a really individualistic sound so people can really grasp that as they just know it's you? Or is it not? Is it, can you do something else? Is it important? And then, so like, we can dig into them actually in a minute. I think that for me, I guess my sort of idea of what it is, first of all, is like how I found my voice is a mix of two things, I think. And again, I've not really thought about this so much, so I'm going to kind of like, we'll discover as we go through.
I love it.
So my voice is a combination of the vocabulary that I've learned through listening to other people, but then developed on my own. So, I'm not saying that I've just taken vocabulary from other people, but and by vocabulary I mean sort of like lines I play on the bass, shapes that I see, things that we all have, like these certain kind of things that we play, and that is our vocabulary on the instrument. So for me, it's like that is definitely a part of my sound. So when we listen to BB King playing the guitar, that's how people are like, oh, it's BB, because he had this certain physicality on the instrument, and he also had these certain BB King style stuff that he did, right? Is that mix
his note choice, his taste, yes.
Yeah, it's sort of like note choice, so what phrases he plays, that vocabulary part of what you do, and your physicality. So it's that, which is, I guess, is two things, like physicality and then sort of like the vocabulary that you actually use when you're on the instrument. And I guess sort of like what vocabulary speaks to you, because there's a certain type of harmony that I gravitate towards and kind of just like intrigues me. So if anybody's like listened to me kind of noodle around, you're probably going to hear sort of like Lydian stuff, and you're probably going to hear like me being cheeky with melodic minor stuff, and like that is intriguing to me, and it's always been intriguing to me. So that's kind of like somehow made its way into my my vocab when I play. And then obviously then there's the physical side of how I play that, and then the second piece to that is the instrument I play. So it's that sort of like combination of those two things, or two or three things. It's sort of my physicality when I play, it's my vocabulary that I've learned over the years, and what intrigues me about that vocab, and why I've kind of built up that selection of pieces of vocabulary, and then that added to the instrument. So when I think about, if somebody was like, what is your sound? What is your voice? Me and I had to just kind of sort of like blurt it out without thinking. I would probably say, oh, a P bass, it's kind of funky, but it's got some sort of like weird vocab that you probably don't associate with funky.
Yeah.
That's probably what I would say. It's kind of like groove bass stuff. It's P bass, but it's also got this stuff that other people generally don't play on the instrument.
Oh, and I love that description for you, because that sounds like you to me. I agree. And I really love your, like I say, oh, oh, your sound is your vulnerability. Well, what the hell does that mean? I mean, I love the way you describe this thing of like, well, it's this amalgamation of all the vocabulary that you've learned. And I think just to talk about that for a moment, I absolutely agree. And I remember as a kid voraciously, like learning all the Victor Wooten stuff I could, right?
Yeah.
Learning all the Geddy Lee stuff, all the stuff that speak to me, all the Flea bass lines. Like I love Paul Simon, Bakiti Kumalo, Tony Levin with Peter Gabriel. Like I absolutely devoured that stuff. But then I also had this weird thing that is so silly where I wouldn't listen to Jocko because I heard people say, oh, if you listen to Jocko and you play fretless, you're just going to become a Jocko clone. And I was like, well, I'm not going to do that. And so I like staved off the Jocko thing for a long time, which is so silly. Yeah. I really, and then I, listened to him and went, oh my, why did I take so long to do this? But I really do feel like, all the vocabulary you can pull in the beginning or throughout your whole trajectory is really good and won't diminish your sound, or it won't dilute, like the more vocab you pull in, it just makes your vocabulary bigger. And then with your taste, with your vulnerability, with you deciding what you like I like that you said this thing about, I like these melodic minor phrases. I like the sound of Lydian. It's something that it's a very simple thing. You dig it, period. It's not like, oh, someone told me I should like it, so I'm trying to like it. No. You like it, and I can tell when you play. And those sounds to me aren't as in my ears. And so when I play or noodle around on the bass, there are different things that come out because my vocabulary hasn't been enriched in those same ways.
Yeah, and everybody has like a different path, right?
Yes. And I think that like the combo of really stretching out that vocabulary and then being really honest with yourself about what you like is critical in kind of going, oh, I'm finding out that I sound this way. Or like Corey Wong has this great thing where he said, he's such a chameleon. Corey Wong, great guitar player. And he said that, when he would do the rhythm thing, that's the thing that got the most response. It got the most intrigue. It got the most questions. It got the most love versus he was like, well, he can shred too. I mean, he can blaze a solo, but that didn't get as many claps or like as much interest as his rhythm playing. And he decided to double down on that, but he had all the vocab. Like it wasn't like, oh, he can just play, oh, he's only funky 16th note player. All this vocab. And then he kind of chose to like onto, a certain thing.
Yeah, I think that Corey's a really unique case as well. I love Corey, and I think that the thing that might get missed sometimes about him is he is really aware of brand and positioning to an acute level. Really,
yes, he is.
Like I'm into it, so I can spot it a million miles away. I'm just like, oh, he gets it. So I would not like. I think that he wants to be his own thing. He doesn't want to be a bad Van Halen or a bad John Mayer and he did exactly the right thing in that. Okay, well, I could try and do that thing that they're doing over here, but there's a lot of people doing that thing, but this thing over here, leaning very heavily into the Prince kind of stylistic thing as well. Minneapolis, it's that thing when you see with the band, that's not happening so much. Nobody's doing that. So and he owns it, right?
Owns it, absolutely, yes.
So it's a really fantastic positioning from a marketing and branding perspective, just to bring it back like that through my lens of understanding that world. He just did a real great job of that thing, and that happens a lot. It's like some people. I didn't do that to that, nowhere near that extent. But when you said that, oh, you were really interesting because you were like playing these kind of sort of like this maybe sort of like jazz type harmony, but you were doing it on a P bass, and nobody was doing it on a P bass.
Nobody.
And we talked about that, and I said that the whole thing was engineered to be like that. I was like, what could I don't want to be a bad version of these guys, so what can I do that isn't that? And for me, it was like, okay, I'm going to play a P bass. It's the exact opposite of what all of those guys were doing.
So badass.
Corey Wong, what did he do? He did exactly the opposite of what all of the other guitar heroes are doing, because all of the other guitar heroes are actually judged on their improv or their soloistic style approach to whatever, right? He's not. He like
freed himself from that box.
Yeah, he's like created his own category. So it's really important to do like a distinction there, that he's almost created his own category. So from like a brand and marketing perspective, he wins because he doesn't compete. No competition. It's amazing. I mean, it's amazing.
And I think too, like when, I used to feel when I would hear brand and marketing, I would almost tune out because it didn't seem like it was cohesive or like it could play nicely with music and art. But I don't feel that way anymore. And I'm totally intrigued by the sense of like, how can you develop your voice? How can you develop your brand? I don't think that brand has to just be synonymous with like, oh, only making money and, who cares about the art anymore as long as we're making money. I think that what you did is very similar actually to what Corey did. And I think it's so smart. And it's just about self-awareness. It's about what you want. If you would have wanted to just be playing those types of licks on a 6-string or a 5-string with a high C bass in jazz clubs for £50 a night, you could have done that. You could still be doing that. But you wanted something more. And so for you, part of your voice, not just about the sound on the instrument, but part of your voice was to say, how can I differentiate with these things that I like that are similar to what maybe some of these other players like? How can I differentiate? And how is that going to set me apart to maybe accomplish some of these other things? Like, how is my voice going to play into what I want to create? Is that true? Were you thinking about SBL and about your brand and about your company when you decided to move from the boutique overwater vibe to Fender?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I was like, I need to have broader appeal. So like a couple of different things. Like, I don't want to be compared to anybody in the space because I don't want to. Yeah, I have to, like, if you can create your own kind of lane, it's a lot easier, because then there is no competition. You're not competing. There is no competition. You're just sort of like you're in your own lane doing your own thing. And then also, I think that it was like super niche what a lot of the kind of sort of like the pyrotechnical style players, it was real niche. And to grow anything of any size, I knew that it was going to serve me and my audience a lot better if I wasn't on a 5-string, I wasn't on a 6-string, I was on a 4-string. Do you know what I mean? So that was a big part of it. And then the foundational piece was, I was doing it to grow SBL, to help. It was all in a mix. It was, and it wasn't all about business. It wasn't all about that. Like, personally, it was like from an art perspective as well. It was fucking amazing, actually. It was really freeing, actually, to step out of that lane and find my own space. And I was like, oh, and honestly, the kind of, I think that transition happened over, I know it sounds silly, but like maybe 4 weeks. It like really did.
Incredible.
It was sort of like, I think I'm going to do this. And then I just flipped it and started playing the P bass, and my playing didn't change much, but it sounded very different. And you can't play all of that stuff on a P bass. You've got to be more considered. But it's the happiest I've ever been in my playing, period. And that happiness has sustained. It's sustained right from that moment. I was like, oh, I don't, because I was chasing, trying to be like other people, and then suddenly made that mental switch of, actually, I don't want to do that. It's really important for me to not do that. I made that switch, and then ever since then, I've just felt so much more confident about what I do, because It's just my thing.
You hit on a word that really gave me goosebumps. Like when you said happiness, that's what it is, right?
Yeah.
It's about like finding your sound is maybe not about this slog through the, and is it here? Is it here? It's this arduous task. What is something, I mean, it could be that, but what if it's something that brings you relief? What if you go, I've been chasing down these wrong paths, and what if I pick up this bass right here and I start to think about the things I learned as a kid, and I start to, what is going to make me feel happy? Right?
I will definitely say that when people do find that lane, I think it's worth considering for anybody, even before you find your sound, conceptualizing what it might be. What do you want to be? Like we talked about that last week. We're like, what do you, instead of like accidentally letting it happen, like what do you actually want to be? Sort of like, so conceptually understanding that. And then once you understand what you want to be, then edging towards it. And it's obviously a discovery process, right? You're going to sort of like dip in. You might not enjoy that bit. You might want to customize, whatever, right? But just sort of like having an idea of where you're going, because I think that ultimately if you find your own space, and I'm not saying that everybody needs their own lane, but really everybody's going to end up in your own lane anyway, because
for sure.
I think that it's always worth thinking about this stuff. And I think that when you do find your own lane, if you're anything like me, it is like it's an anxiety relief. It just goes. It's just like,
yes.
And then to what you were saying earlier, Ian, then you can like lean into it. And then you're like, I've found this thing that I think really sounds like me. How do I then expand that thing instead of, and I think what an amazing process to go through. Like obviously super frustrating at the same time because music is frustrating. And so, I mean, like it is, right? But you can absolutely pursue a sound. Think about like, what do you want to sound like? What do you want it to be a mix of? And then just go pursue it and find out lean into it in a big way. That's what I did. I think it's a really worthy pursuit.
And I think, because I mean, I remember seeing you do the lessons on like pre-Fender. I remember seeing you on YouTube with Overwater. And did you play, were there any other brands that you played like in the beginning before Fender? Or was it mainly that Overwater 5-string?
Overwater, 5-string, high C.
Yes, high C. Yeah, dude. But so rad for chord shapes. And I mean, awesome.
Yeah, great. Love it.
But so when I saw those videos, I was like, oh, cool. Like here's an engaging educator doing this thing. But I have always, with players like with 5-string high C style players, I've always kind of had to like make a shelf to put that on. Like it's not, it doesn't resonate with me, like that sound and that concept. But there were so many other things that did. And then when you went to P-Bass, I was so intrigued. I was like, who is this guy?
Well, it had the desired effect then, yeah.
It did. And that may be very shallow for me, like, because yes, it sounded different, but there was an aesthetic. There was that thing of like, I'm doing these things, like you said, I'm doing these things on the instrument that you're not supposed to do them on. And that sort of like rule breaking thing has been a big part of my trajectory as well, where I'm pursuing sounds, and maybe sometimes people have said, oh, you can't put reverb on a bass. And there's a sound that I use a ton with spring reverb and tremolo, almost kind of baritone guitar vibe. I use it a ton. And of course you can. You can do anything you want. And so when people are kind of like, no, what's the best bass? What's the best pedal for this kind of thing? I like to like, let's knock those edges wider.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there a way
like when I think about your sound, I just think about, I think that the sort of like, it's interesting when I think about your sound as a player, it's really, it's like an expansive, I guess, emotion thinking about the way that you play, because it's very much about sound. It's like all about the sound. You've got all of these just bonkers, like it's like you're a freaking tone master, just sort of like this really, and it's that and like with a massive spoonful of creativity in there as well. It's sort of like all about like I would drive you mad if you sort of like jumped into my body with my brain for a bit. I'm sort of like plug in. Right.
Right.
You are much more like about the tonal concept and sound and expand.
Yeah.
I do look over that side of the fence, man, and the grass is green.
Well,
I'm not saying it's greener, but
look over
green, dude. Real green.
I'll tell you what, man. When I feel like my lawn's getting pretty brown, I peer over the fence into your side too, and I go, "Oh man, I should probably just plug in and play a little bit." You know, I gotta get those melodic minor, modes together. I mean, what happened for me is when I started to do session work, I played very simply. Like I was playing in genres, like I never came up playing in any kind of jazz context at all. So I was playing singer-songwriter stuff, rock stuff, electro, indie rock, hip hop, where there was a lot of ostinato bass lines or very just like root bass lines. And in the scenes that I came up in my 20s and 30s, it was more about like, play the right note, play the one thing, play the ostinato pattern that repeats. And what is going to make it interesting is where you place it. It needs to be simple, no fills, like get that out of your vocabulary. No fills, it needs to be simple. And then what's going to make it compelling is the sound. Right. So I had this whole thing around like, whoa, because I was, everybody likes to shred and I was trying to, double thumbing and want to be Victor Wooten. And yeah, dude, I tapped and geez. But when I started to do session work, I realized very quickly that stuff was not serving me. The facility that it gave me would sometimes serve me, but thinking about, I need to play pyrotechnically in this place was never a value, at least in the artists and things people that I was working for. So it became more about what's the vibe, what's the reference? Are we going for 2000s Killers? Are we going for the Rolling Stones? Are we going for Paul McCartney? Are we going for Wrecking Crew? Are we going for synthwave, The Midnight? And all those things, I had to learn what all those things meant. And then what I discovered was it was more about what you bring to the table sonically than it was about how you deftly maneuvered around the bass with drums.
Oh man. I just want to sort of like put a few things out there just for sort of like the conversation. So
yeah.
So first of all, I think that the big piece that is really easily missed by bass players is that from a sound philosophy perspective, it's really easy to just think, oh yeah, I can be a bass player and I can buy pedals and I can just put them on and have all of these cool sounds. That is like, I can pick up a bass and I can learn a scale and I can play all the notes. That's what it's the really same thing, right? So, and I think that there's a misconception in the art of sonic philosophy of sound. And I think that when I think about your sound as a bass player, that's a huge part of it. Sort of like that, you've got this real philosophy of sound and tone and what you said right there is that you had to learn all of that stuff. And just like you would learn a scale and learn how to use it or a lick or a line.
Very good.
You've got this like huge depth of knowledge of like philosophy and sound, right? That is really easy to miss from a student perspective is like, oh yeah, like he uses effects. The end. I can do that. That's like saying he uses scales. I can do that. Well, yeah, you can use a scale, but we can all buy an octave pedal. We can all buy a distortion pedal. But there's so much more depth there and so much more art as well in the actual execution of it. Just like you can take a scale is like a bunch of notes where you can take a bunch of effects pedals. But when it comes to actually executing and having that philosophy dialed in within an actual sort of like artistic environment, it is a different ball game. You have to have, you have to put in the freaking hours to make that an extension of who you are as an artist and a musician, not just like a thing on the floor that you stand on when you want it to sound.
Wow, man. I actually have never in my mind made the analogy or like the comparison between like, thinking about soundcraft and thinking about scales, but in that way of like anyone can learn where to put your fingers, right? To do, or anyone can buy an octave pedal, you're right. But it's about then, now what? Is this sound in your ears? What I find with a new scale, a new series of notes, is typically my biggest hurdle is that the sound isn't in my ears. I don't hear, you know what I mean? I don't hear a particular interval yet. And what I mean by, like, if you're listening, you're like, what does he mean? Hearing means I don't maybe listen to music that is hipping me to those sounds. So I will play melodic minor and I go, man, that minor third and then the major rest of the scale, just it's not in my ears. Hearing that major 7, hearing that natural 7 and flat 3, yes, and so I know that scale, but I don't hear that scale, right?
Exactly that, and it's the same thing with effects, isn't it? It's just yeah. I think it's just.
And I tell people all the time that message me about effects, they say, hey, what sound is that? Hey, when you use that particular sound, how do you set the knobs? And I always say the same thing. I will tell you, because I'm all about giving information away. I don't think that I have a secret. I don't think that, oh no, if someone sets the same things, now they're going to get called and I'm not. Like, I think people do have those insecurities. Like, oh, I'm not going to talk about this pedal. There's a bunch of players I can think of that are very secretive about gear, which is preposterous to me. But it's
because they don't understand it. They don't understand what we just talked about. The end. Do you know what I mean? They don't understand.
That's so true.
It's sort of like, it's like...
It's how you use it.
Do you mean like all the keyboard players have just got keyboards, right? So that everybody can have the same keyboard. Do they all sound the same? No.
Not even close. That's so good.
Exactly.
You're totally right. Yeah. And so I say to them, I will tell you what it is. I'll tell you the settings, but it's the wrong question. The right question is, what made you want to make that sound? That's the right question. Because if they said to me, what made you want to make that sound? I would hip them to a couple records. Similarly, I find with you, like if I were to say to you or someone were to say to you, what made you want to get melodic minor in your ears? What made you understand harmonic minor? You would be probably more excited to answer that question than, hey, show me that sick lick. Because it would involve depth, right? You would say, there would be recordings. Immediately, you can probably think of some things, right? Yeah. And so that's the stuff to like, if you're listening and wondering about voice, it comes back to that vocabulary and what you like, right? It's like, Scott, your vocabulary and what you like, what's in your ears makes you sound the way you do. So instead of thinking about like learning the fast lick that Scott plays, I want to know, right? Like what made you want to play those licks? That's the better question.
And maybe this is exactly let me just get this straight in my mind before I speak about it. So so check this out. Maybe your philosophy of sound, because everybody's got a different philosophy of sound, right? Maybe your philosophy of sound is like part of your vocabulary. Maybe it's part of it. Well, it's definitely part of your voice on the instrument, isn't it?
Yes.
And like for me, like I don't really do that many effects. Yeah, I've got an octave pedal and I use it sometimes, but that's kind of I've got a distortion pedal. I put that into the octave, and But when it comes to sort of like that real kind of like thousands of hours spent practicing with sounds and understanding of sounds and listening to different sounds, and like I just haven't got it. I just have never done it, and I don't feel guilty about that.
Sure.
I feel that it's something that maybe I'll get into the future, but maybe it's just like maybe I won't. Maybe it's just like not me. It's like somebody listening to your point. It's like somebody listening to that melodic minor stuff and being like, oh, I've got a great little nugget to drop here. Actually,
Oh,
it's like
good.
somebody listening to that melodic minor thing and thinking, "Man, that doesn't sound really. It didn't really do anything kind of like emotionally for me. So I'm not gonna.
Right.
I'm not gonna go learn that now." Interesting little nugget here is that I, as a student, and I'm still a student now, right? We're all students, we're all learning. But as a sort of like I was full on in student lane, right? And I was like
Yes.
practicing a lot and all of that. I was like studying with Gary Willis, and I was probably the same as everybody, man, out there, right? I thought I needed to do everything. I felt guilt when I didn't do everything. I felt sort of like, oh, I'm not using melodic minor. So at the time, I knew the melodic minor scale. I could play one.
Yeah.
I just didn't use it at all. I just couldn't, it just sounded weird. I was like, I just can't use this thing, right? Anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm like in Gary Willis's flat, his apartment over in Barcelona. And I'm like, Gary, I was like, I've learned this melodic minor thing. I just can't. I just find it really hard. Like I'm just not getting it. I'm just not getting it. And he replies, he's like, "Yeah, me neither. I hate the sound of that thing. I never use it." I was like, what? He was like, "Oh yeah, I never use that thing." He was like, "It just doesn't sound right to me." I'm like, so like Gary Willis, for anybody that doesn't know, he's like one of the greatest jazz electric bass players of all time that ever existed, right? And he's just like, "Oh, I just don't hear it. I don't use that." And in that second, it was like, it was like somebody saying, "Hey, you don't need to actually use everything, like, and you don't need to feel guilty about it because Gary Willis, who's God, he doesn't care, which means you don't have to care either." So, to my point here is that if somebody's watching me and worrying about, because like, long story short, I use like crap ton of melodic minor stuff all of the time. I'm addicted to it, so I crossed the barrier. Even though Gary didn't use it, years later I found it, and that's a whole different. We could get into that. That's a whole different.
Yeah,
but if somebody's listening to you and they're feeling guilty that they don't have this sort of like this like sonic understanding of how to do that with their bass,
or if they don't like it,
and check it out exactly, and they don't really like it, they're like, "Oh, I don't really like pedals." I'm like, "Yeah, great, you don't need to." Just like Gary Willis was like, "That melodic minor thing, I'm not really into it." And I was like, and in the past I've been like, I'm just a bit of I'm simplistic. I'm a simpleton, man. I just want to plug in and go, right? And maybe in the future, just like I did with melodic minor, maybe I'll discover something and it will be a whole new adventure that I go on. And that's great. Sure. But what's really important is that we don't need to have anxiety about what we don't do right now. We just don't need to have anxiety about it, you know.
That's right. And where I find, where I'm peering over the fence is when I find myself in improv situations, which isn't very often, but I play in this trio called The Orange Goodness. And it's more of like a rock funk thing, and I get to play my sounds, but there are moments that it opens up. Yeah. And I find that I wish I had more solo vocabulary. I've got some basic rhythmic pentatonic vocabulary all day long, but I find that I wish I had more connectivity to improvisation with more vocabulary, right? With different scales, with just a little more connectivity to melodies, right? And so that's when I start to go, like I feel a need. Like when I'm in my lane and I'm making records at home for people and doing things and able to, or like copying, like, oh, I need to find that N-Twistle thing because I'm making a video for SBL on N-Twistle, which I'm not currently, but I'd like to. That I'm in a sweet spot, like rock and roll, finding the sound, talking about how you get that sound, maybe even grabbing the bass, maybe grabbing an old Thunderbird. Ooh, an opportunity to use my old Thunderbird, right? Yeah. Like that, I love that stuff. But when the rubber hits the road and I am asked to solo, I get huge anxiety, Scott.
Is it the anxiety?
I am not free in that space at all. I don't feel like I can blaze a solo. I mean, I can play something hopefully compelling and rhythmic and pretty simple that maybe builds, but I got 16 bars, maybe 32 before I feel like I'm like waving the white flag of surrender. So, put me in a jazz context, I'm dead. I don't know very many standards. I mean, I worked through, some of the ornithology, like the Parker things, but I feel like such an imposter in that zone. And for me, I'd like to get better at it, but it's not the thing that I do. And so sometimes I wonder, do I just need to let go of it? But when I'm on that bandstand with the, I feel like, oh no, I actually do need to be pushing forward into this zone because it's just going to make me better,
Well, dude, like what I wanted to do as well is just, and I'm looking at my list here. We've talked about, can you pursue a sound, which you can. We've talked about, why it might be important to pursue a sound or to get a sound. Why having an individual sound can be really beneficial because obviously it gives you some personality. You don't want to be, oh yeah, that bass player who's personalityless. Oh yeah, I can never tell when it's that guy playing. I mean, like you want to have some.
Who's that again?
Yeah, who's that again? I mean,
right.
But I've got on my list here. It says who has a voice that stands out. Now, before we go into this, I want to kick this off with. And it's a great segue from what you were just saying there, right? You were like, because let's talk about like who you are as a player. You're not whizzing around playing melodic minor stuff, in your sleep and all of that good stuff. You have got this amazing understanding and capability to craft these fantastic sonic experiences on the bass. I'm going to call it a sonic experience. Right, but you've obviously put your 10,000 hours into that thing, and you've got everything else locked down. I mean, you've got the pocket thing locked down, and you're obviously a fantastic bass player. But layer on top of that, you've got this other sort of like ninja ability to bring to the table. Somebody who I think is very different player to you, but here's the key thing. Here's the key thing. But is in jazz circles.
Yes.
And so I'm going to, okay, so let's see if you can guess who this is, right? He's definitely got a sound, right? So he plays in a lot of kind of sort of like improvisational based jazz stuff. He's definitely not who you would think is like a jazz player, okay? He's definitely not whizzing around melodic minor stuff in the middle of the night. He's got he enjoys sonic philosophy in terms of like not just bass but sound in a big way, and you might maybe and you might not know this, but the guy has got these, and he's like an anomaly in this way, and this is why I love that conversation that we were having a few minutes ago about finding your own lane, especially from a soloist point of view. He's just got this thing, his own lane. And because of that, he just exists in this little bubble within it of awesomeness. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I don't even want to say it. I don't know. I'm so curious. The person that came to mind in the beginning, and then as you continued to talk, I started to doubt my choice.
So was a lot of improv. Okay. Yes, Lefebvre for it, but he wasn't who I had in mind.
Damn it!
Let me just see. Let me see. There's a specific thing I want to play you because Lefebvre is absolutely killer. Actually, he fits all of the stuff that I just said. All of it.
Yes.
Improv based. Yes. Definitely not like losing sleep over melodic minor. Has like this. Is known for having this very individualistic approach to sound on the bass, use a lot of effects and stuff like that, right? But then I said, but this guy who I'm talking about has got a very, as a soloist, he's out there, man. I'm just like, I watched this clip and I was like, oh, dude. I was just like, let me
got
just
me on freaking pins and needles right now, Divine.
Here we go. I'm going to play this.
I can't wait. Oh, cool.
This is live.
Oh.
Jonathan Marin.
That's Marin? Ah!
Jonathan Marin.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
I did not know that was Jonathan Marin.
Jonathan Marin. He's a dark horse, dude. He's got all of this stuff. Like now, now here's the interesting thing, right? So yeah, like straight out of the gate, he's just got this, especially on that track there, he's just got this mad sound. It's like fuzz. It's like it's distortion. It's like he's got like an octave thing going on. Okay, what's really interesting is there's no jazz vocab going on there. It's in a jazz. I think it's Mark Juliana. I think it might. No, actually, it's Zach Danziger, who, interestingly, sort of like played with Tim LaFave. So it's that school of kind of. Yes. And actually, when Tim couldn't do the what tour he was doing it with Mark Juliana and Donny McCaslin, that band, the Black Star Band with David Bowie. So David Bowie's band with Donny McCaslin, Mark Juliana, Tim LaFave, and I can't remember the keys player. They actually went on tour doing their own thing. When Tim LaFave couldn't do it, Jonathan Marin covered. He went in. So you were so close, man. But what the interesting thing is about Jonathan Marin is that he doesn't have a typical jazz vocabulary. But when it comes to soloing, because he's not trying to do that. He's not, I'm going to learn jazz vocab now. He's not doing that. He's like, I'm going to use a really unique sound from a sonic perspective that is not like bass. It's just, it's almost like keys, right? It's almost, he's looking at like a keys player almost. From a sonic perspective anyway. And then what he's using is actually a lot of pentatonic based stuff, but he's just so good at it. So good at it. Oh, Jonathan Marin, we hate you. You're too good.
Oh, I know. His EP that he put out recently is so incredible too. And I had him on just my Instagram channel, and we talked about it, and I got to ask him a bunch of questions. He had this amazing thought too of like, he said to me, do you ever... Oh, man, I've thought about this so much, and I still don't ever quite know what he means, but it was so good. I just want to know. I want to know what it means. He said, "Do you ever squint your eyes and blur out the details of a shape? Like you're looking at a car or a tree or a building. Do you ever blur your eyes so that you get rid of the details?" And
if anybody can't see us right now, me and Ian are sitting here with our eyes closed pretty much.
And I said, I don't think so. And he said, I just do that all the time. And I said, why? And he said, to see the essence, to see the bigger picture, to not get bogged down in the details. It's to see the essence of something. And I thought, Jesus Christ. It was so lovely. And I said, Jonathan, I am so the opposite. I'm zoomed in. I'm parameters. I wonder if, I'm trying to really get the thing, because we were talking, I think it was because of transcription. He said that he's never really transcribed anything fully. Like he's never taken a tune and gone all the way through it, or someone's catalog.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've talked about, like really getting into Jamerson, really getting into McCartney, really getting into Levin, like all these players for me where I really want to know. And I do these character studies kind of, like the album deep dives I do for SBL, Yeah. And he said, it's embarrassing to me, but I've never really done that. And I said, you're kidding. And he said, no. And then he said, do you ever squint your eyes and blur something out? And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? And then he was like, it's to see the essence. So his whole thing was, I want to learn bits and pieces. Like he
doesn't want to get bogged down in the details. He's trying to see, he wants to hear the essence and take the essence, right?
Yes. Yeah. And so he doesn't care exactly what McCartney played. Yeah. He hears a phrase and he goes, "Ooh, that's nice." And he hears a phrase, "Ooh, that's nice." And it has made him this exquisite, wizard, unique player. But he is remarkable, Jonathan, if you ever watch this, love you forever. I want to understand more about who you are.
Me too, man. Like, I think, like, we were in New York, like, the first time. It's really incredible having the ability to, like, when we've been in the studio, we have, like, these, like, just amazing bass players coming in every single day when we're doing those recording sessions over in New York. You know, it'll be like people like Steve Jenkins, and then Shaun Hurley, and then Jonathan Marin, and then Rich Brown, and then, like, just sort of like a flow of these sort of, like, incredible bass players. And I can remember Jonathan. And what's interesting about this? So two things. What's interesting is this thing that we've been talking about for this entire episode, except for our sort of like sci-fi intro, right? This thing that we've been talking about for this entire episode is so abundantly clear when you see bass player after bass player after bass player coming through into the studio. You're like, they've all got their own kind of just like individual sound and voice on the instrument.
Yeah.
And why it was kind of top of mind just then when we were talking about Jonathan is that when Jonathan came in that day to record, we've done a couple of courses. There's actually a course that we've just released with Jonathan in SBL.
Shout out to SBL. So good.
Yeah, with the band SBL, and stuff.
If you haven't, yeah, it's so cool. And if you haven't watched, like, everybody after this should just go watch the Marin courses. The new one is great, and his first one is so great. I really took a lot away from them. They're really, really good.
Well, he came in. Here's what's interesting, that he, for whatever reason, and I think it actually comes down to his voice on the instrument. Remember what we were talking about having like, well, we've talked about it in several different ways. We talked about creating your own category, creating your own lane.
Yeah.
We talked about Corey Wong has created his own category or his own lane. Mm-hmm. Like, when we were in New York that first time, and we had that sort of like all of these fantastic bass players coming through that all had like all amazing chops, right? The one that when I left stood out among all of the fantastic bass players that we'd seen, and this is no disrespect to any of the players, they were all world class. The one that I sort of think about the most is Jonathan Marin. And it's because if I think about it, if I just sit back and think why, it's because he was just different to all of them.
Yeah.
He just had something different, and he was just in his own category, in his own lane. I couldn't be like, oh, this guy does that. He just did his own thing, and he had the sonic approach and philosophy of his playing was very important to him as well. It was like as important as the bass playing. He had sort of like that approach that you do, and he was the only guy that had that had come in. Like all of the guys that were amazing, their chops to die for, all of that. But he came in, and it wasn't just bass playing. It was like this other kind of like, again, he had like a different philosophy of how he was approaching sound on bass, and it really kind of like stood out. I'll tell you again, and this is again just sort of like something just to throw in there. Somebody else that was very much like that in the complete opposite way was Shaun Hurley. Shaun Hurley.
Oh yeah, dude.
In the complete, like, completely different player, right? But again, he came in, he had this like his own lane going on. It's very fascinating for me. That is very fascinating.
Do you know that over this past year and a half, Jonathan Marin organized a Zoom call once a month with his friends, and I got asked to join the Zoom call at one point, but there were about, 10 to 20 people on this Zoom call every month, and he would feature a different person every month and ask them questions. And it was...
And this was just like a private thing that he was doing,
Yeah.
What a dude.
And he stopped doing it, but it was so lovely, and it was so without fanfare. And oh man, it's just a lot of lessons to be learned from that guy. And whenever somebody would put the focus on him, he would he would sort of deflect it back into, if one thing, Jonathan, if you're watching, we want more of you, man. We want you to post about what you're doing. We want, it would be
album
a gift
number
to us
2.
all.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I really do. Like I think I've said it on a previous podcast. I was so happy, like properly. Do you know what I mean? Like I was properly happy that he put that EP out, or that out. Was it an EP or an album?
EP.
An EP.
Yeah.
EP. What's the difference? There's a few more tracks.
Shorter. EP is extended play. LP is long play, but it feels like extended play would be the long one. But
this is like somewhere in between, isn't it? It's like sort of like 7 or 8 tracks or something.
Yeah.
That. But when he did that, I was just really, really over the moon, because I think that I linked to it a bunch on Instagram as well. I was like, go listen to this. Please go listen to this.
It's so good.
Because I think that, it's just really important that people do that. Like I've just done we've talked about this before, a terrible job of putting my own music out there. I'm not sure that do you feel that anxiety or not? Maybe
constantly. And I have all these grand plans, right? And every day I'm thinking, ooh, what am I going to... And I feel like I have some things in the works, but I never prioritize it like I think I should, Got it, yeah. But man, just to say too about Hurley, Shaun Hurley, when he came on the scene, got the mayor gig, and then he was really visible. He was on podcasts and he was doing, interviews for Fender. I watched every single thing that I could possibly find. I've watched every seminar he did early on SBL when he's in like a bedroom and it's real grainy. And I watched all that. I watched every YouTube video, and I remember him even saying, this was sort of in the beginning of when I was starting to work with Eric Hutchinson, which is like, he's like soul singer, pop, R&B kind of singer. And I remember Hurley being like, a P bass is like a real man's bass. I remember him saying something like that. And I was like, I gotta, it wasn't that I wanted to sound like Shaun. I think I was just so compelled by his opinion, by his sound, by his dedication to like creating the right thing. He plays so soft. And then that P bass has all that mid-range. And like, he just has such a cool sound, and he's not trying to blow the doors off. He's very confident and comfortable in playing these sort of simple, lovely executed bass lines. And that, I was like, I feel like it gave me almost permission to have some of that be like, I don't have to do this. Like maybe I can go boom, a boom, doom, a boom, and that will be enough. Shaun Hurley kind of gave that to me, permission to play simply. And then I was like, I got to play a P bass. I was very inspired. And then it took me a while to go like, P bass is not really me. I love the early P bass.
Interesting, yeah. So
love a jazz bass, and I love the 51 P bass. But boy, I struggle to hear P bass for me. I use it a bunch on sessions, but I don't feel like it's really the essence of. It's not
I'm like the
sound that I hear.
Dude. I know. I'm like, it's so great. Like, this is why I love like bass. I think it's just sort of like a continual. The deeper you go, the deeper it gets. It turns into the abyss, doesn't it? I was doing something at the weekend in the studio with a bunch of guys who were recording, kind of sort of like I say jazz, but I say that super loosely. It was kind of sort of like an improvisation type thing, and really great players, freaking great drummer. Oh, Dave, so good. Anyway, so I took 2 basses. I took the bass that I was going to use, and I was like, I really want to use this bass. It's got like a P pickup on it. I really want to use this bass. But then in my mind, I was like, I might as well take a P bass as well. I might as well just because. So I put the P bass in the car as well. Went to the session, played one tune. P bass came out the bag straight. I was just like, I just didn't sound like me. It's like I was like speaking through somebody else's voice box.
Yeah, right.
That's what it felt like. It was like, this feels like. Here's the weird thing: I can sit at home and play it all day long. I've done lessons with it.
I know.
Feels great. Get in a band.
Yeah. It's sort of like
I'm
disappears.
like, my voice is not this.
Yes.
So, and I'm not even sure what to take from that. Like, it was really confusing at the time. I was like, how come I can sit in here in my studio at home, play it, sounds great. Do lessons, do courses with it, sounds great. But in a band situation, doesn't sound bad, but it's got nothing. But it's in that situation that from a sonic perspective, it's just like, oh, this is not me.
Yeah.
This sounds like I've got like somebody else's face on.
Oh, that's great. I mean, that's something. That's something for everybody listening. Like, a huge take should be that context is huge. Context may actually be everything. You may sort of think that you've stumbled upon something so wonderful in your bedroom or in a practice space, playing alone or playing to records, but the instant you get it out into the world, right? Get it with a band, get it in the studio. Your gut tells you something different. And it's so important to pay attention to that and give that its due, because bass is not meant always to be played alone. It's really an ensemble instrument. It's meant to prop up an ensemble. So what makes you feel like you're best equipped to do that, right? Like, if you feel like this isn't working, oh, pay attention to that, because the ensemble needs you to be its backbone, needs you to feel good about your voice, needs you to feel supportive and creative and walking that line constantly, you know?
Yeah.
So I love that. I love that you're like, P-bass comes out of the bag, you know? I mean, that probably stung honestly, a little bit. Probably hurt a little bit.
I messed up the story a little bit. The story's even funnier. So the full story is I actually had a rehearsal 2 days earlier, and I took that same bass, the bass that I didn't end up using, but I only took that bass. So I took that bass to the rehearsal room. Well, it was actually to a studio, so we're rehearsing in a studio, and I played it for one tune. I was like, oh, it doesn't sound like me. Now, happily, they had a P bass on the wall, so I pulled the P bass off the wall, and I actually did the whole rehearsal on the rehearsal studio's P bass, which wasn't set up that great, but it just sounded like me. Anyway, went home, and then I was like, no, come on, Divine, you can do this. Come on, do this. And then I had that, well, I'll just take the P bass just in case, and absolutely just went straight on after the first tune, straight on the P bass again. It's like I can't get away from it. It's just that I don't know. I can't explain it.
But that's
so weird.
Awesome. But that's good.
Yeah. Oh, it's great. You know? Yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's great. But man, I was really looking forward to using that other bass, and it's easy to play as well. And my P basses, all my P basses have got like super wide 44mm necks, like nuts, so they're just a bit of a bitch to play.
Yeah.
But I think that I'm going to really, like, just from this conversation, I really do want to get deeper. Me personally, I really, really do want to get deeper into, like, understanding how to, I guess, be creative with sound much more. Just like I'm creative with lines in that environment. How do I do that from a sonic perspective and sound perspective? Like, I'm so underexperienced in that. I'm sort of like all about, I've done all of that, playing the bass, played a lot of bass, but especially in that environment, especially in the environment where like Jonathan does, where it's sort of like an improv kind of bass thing. Like, I am like, I used an octave pedal at the weekend on that session.
I saw the story on Instagram. I was like, oh, Divine's got some pedals on the floor, man.
Yeah, man.
That's cool.
I really need to make an effort to do that, because I enjoy it so much. I think that's the key thing. When we were talking earlier about sort of like looking over the fence and being like, and also kind of just calling out that it's cool to not want to do that thing. I actually am drawn to it. So for whatever reason, I just haven't leaned into it. So I really do want to lean into it.
Okay. And I also want to lean into getting a little bit more jazz vocabulary in my ears. So here's what I think you and I have an assignment before the next episode. Our assignment is, I will think of something that I think might be helpful to you and to an audience that maybe feels the same way as you. Like, I don't know, to a recommendation of something to listen to maybe get some sounds in your ears.
Oh, yeah.
And I want you to do the same. Next episode, it'd be fun. I would love to hear from you. You're like, man, I've been thinking about it. And I think if you're like Ian and you want more jazz vocabulary, something to listen to is this. And I think it needs to be one thing.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But my knee-jerk reaction to when you said that, and I just want to say this now, it is something that you may not have thought about, or maybe you have, but I do it a lot, is when you're watching, we're going to bring it back to sci-fi. We're going to bring it back to sci-fi. When you're watching a science fiction film, the next time you're watching it, or put on 2049, or the next time you're doing it, get your bass, and then play along with the soundtrack. And imagine you got hired by sort of an avant soundtrack producer to come in and contribute.
Can we go with Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor?
Yes, exactly. Trent Reznor hits you in the DMs and he's like, Divine, get out to the studio and I want you to contribute to the soundtrack. And I think doing that is a fun way. First of all, it's not like you're trying to play licks along with a record, right?
Yeah,
You're thinking about what could you do to make this scene coming up more impactful. So you're not thinking at all about notes. That's the fun thing about this exercise, is that you start to think more about the sonic landscape, what pedals, like you might bust out that freeze. I know you've got one. You might bust out that freeze.
I've got the freeze, dude.
Roll some notes, right? So that would be a fun exercise for anyone that is wondering about like sonic craft. You need to have a goal. Like, it's hard to just be sitting around thinking, I want to get better doing sounds. Well, but if there's no context or there's no goal, it's impossible, right? So put on a movie and you can contribute to the soundtrack, or you can even turn the sound off and you can make the soundtrack, right? So you are now in charge. Put yourself in that pressure seat or it doesn't need to be pressure. It's just a creative seat of like, if you're making the soundtrack to Blade Runner 2049, what does it sound like? Oh, that's fun.
So good, man. Have you done that?
Yeah. I don't do it a lot, but I really enjoy it. I'll put something on, and then just turn the sound off and try to evoke like what would make the this scene speak.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Oh man, like I really. The interesting thing is that when I said like Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor, they have like, so they're the, like, obviously Trent Reznor is like the guy behind Nine Inch Nails. I'm a huge fan of Nine Inch Nails.
Too.
Huge fanboy of Trent Reznor. What an absolute dude.
Yes.
There's a great. I think it's like some sort of a documentary on YouTube, maybe sort of a multi-part thing of him putting together
Song Exploder. Yeah. You're right.
To do with the production of the tour.
Yeah, the lights and everything. Good. And
Pino Palladino gets brought into the production halfway through because, sorry, Siri. Siri's trying to get in. Like it's so good. But just what really blew me away about Trent Reznor in that particular YouTube video, it's like a documentary. Put like Nine Inch Nails Trent Reznor documentary in YouTube, you'll find it. Yeah. It's his artistic vision and how he was like unrelentless. He was like relentless, sorry about it. And he was like unwavering. His like crew are like, they're like pretty much saying, we can't change it now. We can't change it. He's like, we're changing it. And then they're like, this isn't going to work. We can't do this. They're like, we're doing it. It's just bonkers. I was just like, wow. What balls. Like, I'm just like, huge respect for people that are just really true to their art and their vision and unwavering on their, they're just not going to be shifted. They just don't give two shits about what you think. They're like, this is what I want.
Yes.
And the end. And I think that it's so easy in life. The vision. Yes. It's so easy in life for people to actually, it's so easy. It's so easy for people to have an effect on your vision. And so I've just got this sort of like crazy respect for people that just have the confidence and vision to actually be like, nah, I don't care what anybody else thinks. This is happening. I've just got so much respect for that. But Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, which is the programmer from Nine Inch Nails, they did all of these fantastic soundtracks. Probably the famous one is from The Social Network. The soundtrack to The Social Network. Oh, it's so good.
It's so good. Yes, it is.
It's so good and so simple.
Yes,
it's just
right.
Oh,
yep.
So good.
It's about textures and moods more than it is about sweeping lines.
It's exactly that. Yeah.
It's so cool. So but I will come next time too with an idea of like of a record or some music that I feel like really influenced me in terms of sonic sculpting, and I want then to know from your perspective the record that we. As a community of
to intrigue people's ears about the possibilities of jazz vocabulary on bass.
Yes,
I'm there, man. I know exactly what I'm going to do. I know it. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for hanging out with us. It's been a swift one today. It's been like we're only an hour and 45 in. Screw you, Rogan. We're coming after you. Joe Rogan with his 3-hour episodes. We're going to hunt you down. We're going to go 4 hours one day.
That's right.
Anyway, guys, have a great one. Obviously, as always, if you'd leave a review on all of the places that you can leave it. I think the review place is iTunes. I was reading the reviews just the other day, and somebody, I said, I was like, in the Academy show, I think, I was like, hey, if you leave us a review, we'll send you a Christmas card. and somebody's actually gone onto iTunes, absolute star, whoever you are. Yeah. And I actually tried to memorize the name. I did memorize the name, now I've forgotten it. But they said it was something like referencing the Christmas card. I was like, yes! I was like, yes, I will send you a Christmas card.
Oh,
so,
that's amazing.
If anybody wants to leave us a review, that would be amazing. Spread the word to all of the your bass friends out there as well. And
yes, indeed.
Yeah, tell them that this is the place to come if they just want to nerd out about bass.
Yeah, and we'll see you next week. I'm already looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Okay, take it easy, guys. Bye.
Cheers.